Hey guys, Ranger here, and welcome back to another reaction and review. And this is to the episode, the ninth episode of MLP, which is Sweet and Smoky. And I know this episode has that red dragon bully in it. I forgot his name. And I know that because the Saturday that this episode I was recording this episode, I saw him out of the corner of my eye because my TV is just right over here from my laptop. And so I saw him out of the corner of my eye. So I know he's in this, and I think I glanced over slightly at one point, and I think I saw Smolder in it. And then I was at work one night, like I think it was Sunday night, and I was thinking about the episode because I thought I was going to get to do the episode Sunday night, but my power went out, and I couldn't do it. But I was thinking about no, sorry, it was Saturday. It was Saturday night. Yeah, it was Saturday night because I was off Sunday. And so I thought I was going to get to do the episode Sunday night, and so I was thinking about the episode, and I was working, and it suddenly hit me, what if? Because I started putting two and two together, and I remembered in Meltdown, Smolder made the mention about her brother. And I remembered seeing, like, over in the corner of my eye, I think it was Smolder and that red dragon, and I thought, wait a minute, what if they make, Garble, that's his name, I thought, what if they make him her brother? I thought that. I don't know why I thought that, but I thought, what if they make him her brother? So, let's just begin the episode and see what happens, and it's called Sweet and Smoky. I don't know. I would surmise maybe Sweet was Smolder, Smoky was the other dragon, Garble. I don't know. Okay, that's adorable. Okay. This was a very interesting episode. It really was an interesting episode. I do have several things to say about this episode. Now, first off, this episode does in fact bring forth a few different elements to the table to discuss. First off, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the concept of Garble being Smolder's brother. And I'm not honestly certain how I feel about Garble being Smolder's brother. I'm honestly not certain how I feel about it. It kind of seems very unorthodox for him to be her brother. And it just, I don't know. Part of me can see it, but at the same time, part of me can't really see. Part of me can see it, and part of me cannot. Part of me thinks, like, couldn't they have had another dragon be her brother? I can understand easily why that Garble was her brother here because of the setup. And on that note, it worked. Because he was allowing himself to be someone that he wasn't just simply because of peer pressure. He felt that if he did not be a bully himself, that he would be bullied. So he was basically succumbing to peer pressure of the other dragons around him. He was succumbing to peer pressure and was being someone that he wasn't, and he was keeping the real him bottled up inside. And he was afraid to be different. He was afraid to be himself. He was afraid to be unique, and so he was allowing himself to fall sway to what the other dragons, to their bullying mentalities, and he was allowing himself to become that as well. And as such, he was always acting like a complete jerk, and just because he was afraid of allowing himself to be for fear of judgment being passed upon him, of being ridiculed, and realistically, this is a thing. And so using Garble for this, it worked. However, I'm still not certain about Garble himself being Smolder's brother, because it just seems very unorthodox. It just totally seems unorthodox. I mean, I'm not totally dismissing it, as I can see a similarity. Like, I can see the toughness in both of them, and so I can see the genetic line carrying on within them. I can see where Smolder gets it. Like, you know, growing up with a brother like that, maybe other brothers too, possibly. I don't know how many siblings that she has, but I can see where she gets it from. But, like I said, I can understand the concept of Garble being the dragon of focus for being her brother because of the setup for it. I can see it, and it works. But still, it's just considering what we've gotten with Garble before and the complete douchebaggery that we've seen from him before in the show, I just don't agree with the concept of suddenly supposed to feel for this guy and relate to him. You know, I just don't really see that. Now, there is, if I may say, there is an interesting underlying message here, and you could interpret what this is saying as being a message, is that sometimes a bully may bully others because of fear of being ridiculed, and so that's why they act out. Maybe they have a hidden talent or a hidden desire, a hidden passion that they want to pursue, but they're afraid to let it be known to others, afraid of being ridiculed or having false judgment passed upon them, and so they act out aggressively to conceal what really lies beneath. And that is true with some. Like, that is not 100% true with everybody. In actuality, bullies a lot of the time are just complete jerks, and that's all they are. They have no sympathy for others. They just act out because they feel they're bigger than others, and if you are not on their level, you're completely beneath them, and you are not worth their time, and so they feel like belittling and demonizing and picking on and bullying everybody beneath them. And that's why bullies do not get any sympathy from me. They don't get any mercy from me. Because bullies are just complete jackass. Like, just completely that. And I'm not at all saying that every single bully should be treated that way. But it can be hard to discern exactly what is causing someone to act in a bullying manner. And this is kind of, the concept of talking about a bully is a very in-depth thing, and definitely too long for me to discuss for a video like this, but in brief, typically bullies act out. People would assume that they would act out because of maybe a disagreement with their family. Maybe they don't get along with their parents. Maybe it's the way that they're being raised. Maybe they're acting out because they themselves are being bullied, and so they act out and to try to level the playing field. It can vary, and I am not whatsoever condoning the concept of having sympathy for bullies. I'm not. Because for me, it's the exact opposite. I don't have any sympathy. And so that's why whenever the other dragons were picking on and making fun of Garble here, I was getting such enjoyment out of it. Because in real life, whenever you see a bully get their just desserts and you see the tables turned on them, it is such a joy to see them finally get what they deserve. And I'm not ashamed of feeling that way. I'm not. And like I said, it is an interesting setup here. And it can be interpreted that sometimes someone bullies because of an underlying reason that they have. Now, that's not always the case. Bullies are a problem. Bullies are 100% a problem. And that's why 99% of bullies do not get my sympathy. Garble is like the 1% here. 99% of bullies do not get any sympathy. Do not get any sympathy from me. They don't get any mercy from me. Bullies that pick on other people in school, high school, college that pick on them just because, like they try to set them up just for laughs and just so other innocent individuals can be the butt of jokes, just for their own just for their own stupidity, just for their own brief laughter. People that bully and harass others online just because they enjoy making others suffer, those people are scum. Those bullies are absolute scum, and they don't deserve any sympathy. And bullying Spike, there was no indication prior as to why Spike was being bullied by Garble, other than he just wanted to bully Spike just because he felt that he could. He looked at Spike as the baby dragon, and Spike had lived with ponies, and so he wanted to bully Spike into submission and act like if you weren't born and raised in the Dragonlands and raised as a dragon should be, that you were not fully a dragon, that you were a pansy. And realistically speaking, this kind of mentality actually exists in real life. There are people legit out there that if you do not grow up in a certain area, there are like legit older kids, teenagers, even young adults today that have the mentality that if you don't grow up in a specific area or in a specific class of family, that you are beneath them and you should be bullied because of that, and you're not on their level. And so if you're not on their level, you're not part of their clique. And the fact is, these are not people, honestly, that you really want to be friends with. At least I would never want to be friends with people like these. The closed-minded mentalities of people like this, I would never want to be friends with someone like this. Honestly. But, like I said, it is a very interesting concept. And I, honestly, even though there are two things that I'm not fond of with this episode. Two things. Number one is the concept of Garble being Smolder's brother. Like, it just doesn't... I can't help but wonder, why did they not just have another dragon be her brother, and one thing that comes to mind is upon, like, right now would be a good time to play It's a Small World. It's a small world after all. Because, small world, they're brother and sister, okay. But the second thing is, I don't agree with the concept that we're just suddenly supposed to accept or feel for Garble in this. Because, like I said, I understand. I mean, as a bit of a as looking at this from a psychological and analytical perspective, taking a psychological approach to this, I can understand why that Garble did the bullying. I don't approve of it at all, but I can understand that he was afraid of being ridiculed, of being made fun of, and so he was trying to conceal the real him underneath, because he lived in an area, in an environment that did not approve of that kind of thing. And that has happened in real life. I mean, realistically, how many of us... Now, I'm not exactly comparing us to Garble here, but how many of us, as bronies, as Pegasisters, were afraid to reveal to our families or to other friends of ours that we love the show because we figured that we would be ridiculed? How many of us were put in that situation? How many of us have been in that situation, or how many of us are in that situation? That you're afraid to let people know that you love My Little Pony, afraid of being ridiculed and afraid of being harassed by it. And so this is a real thing. And how many of us have had a dream or a passion of something? Maybe, for example, maybe you have grown up with, like, in a heavy political family. And so they wanted you to follow in the world of politics, but you wanted to branch out and do something different. You wanted to deviate from the path of your family and do something different. I honestly can relate to this, is because, a part of my family is law enforcement based, and my mother wants me to continue that. She wants me to continue down that path and continue that line. But I don't want to do that. I have much respect for law enforcement, the utmost respect for law enforcement, but I want to do something different. Something that I can be happy with. And so, and I can totally relate to that. I can understand that. And I know many of you can as well. be in that situation where you have a passion, a dream for something. Maybe somebody in your family is a wrestler and you want to open up a flower shop, and they just don't approve of it. And so I can understand that, having a dream or a passion, a career choice that you want to do that makes you happy, but others are going to ridicule you because of it, because it deviates from their original intention of you. It deviates from their mindset of what they have for you, what they think you should do. And so I can understand that, looking at it from an analytical and a critical and psychological perspective. I can understand, and I can see where they're going with this with Garble. He lives in an environment. He lives around other dragons who are very easy to pass judgment and ridicule others because things that others have an interest in or do deviate and are different from what they themselves are used to. And so Garble was afraid to let the real him be known. Now, this does propose an interesting thing here is that not all dragons are rough, rowdy. Not all dragons act like complete jerks. This does prove, just like with, I think, Smolder and with Garble, that even though I'm not a fan of Garble, I do have to say, I'm I'm mature enough to look at it from this perspective. Even with Garble, that he has interest in personal things that bring him joy, and things that, ways to be creative and expressive. And honestly, I can more identify with Garble on that, because I love being creative and, having a wild imagination and being able to do things that allow my creativity to flow, and, being able to be expressive. And so I can honestly understand Garble here in wanting to be expressive and show the real him. And he's afraid that if he shows the real him to others, that he will be ridiculed, laughed at, and made fun of. And honestly, being in an environment that is so negative can really and deeply impact your decisions and how much drive that you have. If you live in an environment or an area or a family that would belittle you because of your interests or passions, it can definitely have a negative impact on how far that you will go. Because if you have people to back you up, to support you, I think you're going to go farther. Now, some would argue about this and say that the more people that tell you can't do it, the more drive you're going to have to prove that you can. And this can be the case, but it's not always the case. There are situations where sometimes having a negative atmosphere around you will only bring you down and make you choose to not follow that. And you'll fall sway and blend in with the crowd and do something that you don't want to do just to satisfy others. And that's not really what you should do. You should follow your own path. You should carve your own path and follow that path. And here, Garble is in that situation where he's in a negative, judgmental environment, and he's afraid to let his creativity, his imagination, his true self flow and be known, afraid of ridicule. And honestly, a lot of us can relate to that, because we have been in that situation before. And I can totally understand that. And here he's afraid to be the real him. And like I said, if you are in a negative environment, and this has been a thing. I've seen it, I've heard about it, I've read about it, I know it is a thing. You have a passion, a desire, a career that you want to follow, but maybe you have a family or other friends around you that are constantly telling you you can't do this, you should not do this, because it's just not something that you should do. And, they're constantly putting you down and telling you to do something different. And constantly, now, like I said, sometimes this will cause someone to strive forward and pursue that anyway, just to prove, hey, I can do this, I'm going to do it, screw you. This can be the case at times, but not always. It's not always the case. There are situations where, and I know this has happened, where someone has allowed negativity, that negative influence, to affect them and convince them otherwise that they shouldn't do it, and so they backed out of following something that they wanted to do. They backed out of being the real them, and they became something that they weren't. They became someone that they weren't. And they regretted it. I know this has happened. And sometimes you have to have buildup. You have to have a positive environment to help you to be able to flourish and grow and improve. And that's, I think, why. And and we get that a lot online. It doesn't matter if you're an artist, if you're a fanfic writer, if you're are a musician, if you're on YouTube, you're going to have negative people that are going to try to bring you down. But if you listen to every single negative person, you're not going to go anywhere. You have to listen to the positive people. Positive people will more be likely to more be likely to help you to improve, to get better, because they see potential in you. Negative people are only going to put you down, tell you you can't do it, you shouldn't do it. You don't need to listen to those people. Garble here was afraid, and it took the power of real friends who cared about him to help him to come out of his shell and be able to express himself and not be afraid of that ridicule. And it took real friends to stand up for him and say, hey, this is him. Accept it or shut your freaking face. This is him. At least he has the balls to be creative and, strike out and deviate from what you want him to be. He has the balls to be creative and be expressive in his own unique way. And that is honestly really true for not just the Brony fandom, but a lot of people in general, because today we live, and it's not just today, it has been before, but we live in a world where some people expect a certain thing of you. They expect you to adhere to they expect you to adhere to a specific vision of how they, like a specific society wants us to be a certain way. They expect us to be a certain way. They expect us to adhere to their own rules and regulations and their own vision of us. For example, people in the Brony community, some people outside the Brony community don't think that it's masculine for guys to like My Little Pony. They think that you're completely stupid. And I know there are other women in the Brony that have ridiculed other women in the Brony community as well and saying, hey, you can't do this. But the thing is, we did not listen. We chose to deviate from that path, and we chose to pursue this show and follow the fandom because it was something that brought us joy and it made us happy. And there are many of us right now that can honestly 100% say without a doubt that we have no regrets. We followed this fandom. We chose to not let the negativity bring us down. We chose to follow what made us happy, and many of us, right now can say that we are happier because we chose to follow that path. And we are still choosing to follow that path. And that is basically the way the world is today. There are many people that will yank you from one side to the other because they think what they know for you is what is best. That they think that they know what you should do in life. But really, it comes down to what you want to do. If you want, career choice. If you want to go into law enforcement, but the majority of your friends and family hate law enforcement, like they don't like cops. What is your choice? Are you going to adhere to their beliefs and ignore them just because you want their admiration? Or are you going to choose what makes you happy and follow that path and do what makes you happy and make a difference out there? Be helpful. Be a shining light in your community. They might shun you for it, but then do you really want to lay claim to those people who are constantly bringing you down? I don't. There are women out there right now, I know, who their families are telling them, you need to fully be feminine. You need to do this. You need to do that. There are women out there right now, I know, who wear camo jeans, who wear camo jeans, spiked wristbands. Maybe you ride a BMX bike. And you choose to do your own thing, and you have people in your family, maybe your mother, aunt, whatever, telling you, this is not what a lady should be. You need to be a lady. You need to be proper. But you're like, screw that. I'm a tomboy. I want to do my this is me. And you're choosing. Are you going to let that negative influence? Are you going to let them try to tell you what they think is best for you? And it's a choice that we have to make. Someone says, I know what's best for you, or this is what you should do. Is it really what you want to do? how does what they want you, how does what they want for you fall into what you want? How different is it? And how will doing what they say make you feel? For many of us, it means feeling like we have a ball and chain around our ankles and we're not able to grow as a person. Our creative interests are not able to grow. And in fact, we just feel like we're stuck in a rut, in a pit, going around in a circle our entire life. Life is not worth living if that's what you're going to do. It's not. It's not worth feeling like you're in a rut your entire life. Strike out, be different, choose to be yourself, and choose to be different. Real friends will admire you for that and accept you for that. People that ridicule you and put you down because of that are not worth your time. The other thing that I have to say, and I'm going to also add on to this briefly, is I'm not certain if this episode is telling us that we need to feel sorry for. I'm not certain if this episode is telling us that we need to feel sorry for Garble and that this is his redemption episode. I don't. The ending didn't exactly say that there was any sort of redemption. I mean, there wasn't any solid inclination that Garble was never going to bully Spike ever again. But I think that you could probably consider this Garble's redemption episode, and that he came out of his shell, and so the other dragons are possibly might accept him for who he is, and if they don't, he's just going to be like, screw you, I don't need you anyway. I've got real friends who accept me for who I am, who is supportive of me, and who share that interest, who are willing to help me to grow in my interest and in my passion. And that's real friendship right there. Now, like I said, on one hand, I like the concept of his redemption and what they did with it here. But at the same time, I have to say that I don't approve of it. And like I said, this goes back to what I said before, that if Lightning Dust can't get redemption and she's just supposed to be an antagonist, then I think that, personally, Garble should have stayed that too. I still feel that Chrysalis, Tirak, and Cozy Glow should not get redeemed. And I had someone else mention this just recently about what about Starlight Glimmer? She got redemption. I'm totally fine with Starlight having redemption because I totally approve of that. The thing is, there is a difference between Starlight. Starlight just she was totally fine living in her isolated village where everything was equal. But she wanted, and she was totally fine. However, until Twilight came in and disrupted everything and tried to make everybody have cutie marks again. The Starlight had an emotional and emotionally traumatizing event whenever she was younger that made her become who she was. However, for Cozy Glow, Chrysalis, and Tirak, there is no indication as to why they became villains, why they became evil whatsoever. But I still say that, in my mind, headcanon-wise, Garble is still kind of a douche. Because I still say if Lightning Dust and even Flim and Flame can't get redemption, then I don't think Garble should either. That being said, I'm not against this episode because of that. I really do respect what they did with the episode, and I really respect what they did with the story, and even with Garble, and I do admire it. I really do. I do not want to be biased about it and let my own personal opinions, influence my overall view of it. I want to look at it from a balanced perspective, and that's what I always try to do. I try to look at it from a balanced perspective, and look at it from an analytical, unbiased, balanced perspective, and so that I can view everything on a balanced level, and that's what I want to do. And so, like I said, even though I don't approve of Garble's redemption, if you could consider this episode that, I still have to admire what they did with the episode and have to admire the creativity that they put behind it to show, allowing yourself to be the real you. I have to admire that because it is honestly true. And it's interesting because it did play out well with Garble in that he's been around other bullying dragons before, and so they had their own bullying clique before, and so he was afraid to be himself, afraid that the other bullies would bully him, and so he had to be tough in order to not be passed judgment upon. And so I have to respect what they did with it, and I do like what they did with it. like I said, I do still think personally that as far as Starlight goes, I do feel that she got a second chance, and I'm very happy that she did. And so I am happy that she did, and I do think that she personally deserved it. Um, because realistically, some of us would have, I know I would have honestly made the same choice that Starlight did. You know, after you lose a friend really close to you, I'm not going to say whatsoever that I wouldn't have done like Starlight did. You know, and automatically believe that all friendship is false and that, you know, there has to be some sort of equalization. I'm not going to say whatsoever that I wouldn't have chosen the same path that Starlight would have, because there's a very good chance that I would have. And so if Starlight doesn't deserve any redemption for what she did, then honestly, I don't deserve it either. And so people that want to burn Starlight at the stake, they should burn me too. You know, because I would have probably made the exact same choice. Back on the episode itself, I can totally admire what they did with Garble here, and creating a hidden, a hidden person beneath, because realistically, there have been a lot of us that have been that way before. You know, like you're one way to some people, you act tough maybe to others, maybe at work. You know, like you put on a face at work, but then whenever you get away from your coworkers, you come home, the real you comes out, and you're able to be yourself. You're able to be the real you, and home being yourself is what makes you feel good. It recharges your batteries. And so here he was in an environment where he had to be someone that he had to be someone else just because of not wanting to be, you know, harshly judged. And so it took the power of friendship to help him to come out of that shell and become the real him. And I really admire what they did with that, and it is honestly really true. But it doesn't apply to all bullies, and I do not want that's definitely an advisement that I have to say, and I would definitely have to make this a public service announcement here. Do not apply this logic to all bullies, because it does not apply to all bullies. At least 90% of bullies out there do not deserve a chance. They don't, because they're constantly bullies, and just simply sit back, wait, and at some point they will get their just desserts. They'll get out in the real world, and and their bullying ways will catch up to them. And, you know, karma will come back, and it won't bite them on the rear. Karma will shove a broomstick up their anus. Like, hello, I'm here. So, yeah. More than 90% of bullies don't deserve any sympathy. And so I still don't, like I said, I can't understand why, I understand totally why that Garble had to conceal himself, the real him. I understand it completely. However, I don't agree with him acting out aggressively and bullying as a way to, you know, as a way to try to fit in and blend in. I don't agree with that at all. Because whenever you do that, you're risking becoming that. You're risking becoming that. And the thing about Garble is, you know, I think he's old enough to be mature enough, somewhat, to see that, you know, that he knows what he's doing, but he's not mature enough, however, and he doesn't have the kind of sensitive part of him to know, or to feel guilty. Like, there wasn't any inclination whatsoever that he felt guilty for bullying Spike. He did not have any guilt for bullying Spike. Like, he never apologized to Spike, you know, in private, and said, hey, I'm only doing this because I don't want the others to bully me. I'm sorry. You know, just go along with it. He never did that, and so he's not mature enough to, or has enough of a sensitive soul or a sensitive heart to feel any guilt for his actions or any remorse. But he's mature enough to understand that the reason why that he's doing it is to conceal the real him. But he's still not mature enough to know, to feel any regret for what he's doing. And so I still think the mature thing to do would be to apologize to Spike because of all the bullying. He didn't directly do that at all, though. He did not even indirectly do that. And so, you know, he still needs to apologize for that and say, hey, you know, I was a douche, I was arrogant, I was a complete jerk. And, I'm sorry. I don't deserve your forgiveness whatsoever, and I don't blame you if you don't want to forgive me, but I am truly sorry. I acted out aggressively whenever I shouldn't have, just to try to conceal myself because I was afraid. And I should not have acted out in that way. I should have taken my aggressions out and done something else instead of acting out and bullying others, because that's wrong. That would have been the mature thing to have said, but he did not do that, so he's still kind of a douche. He picked on a younger dragon that did no harm to him just because he was afraid. And I don't condone his behavior at all. I can understand him, kind of relate to his, him wanting to conceal that for afraid of being ridiculed, but at the same time, I don't approve of the way that he did it at all. I'm 100% against bullying. I am 100% against bullying in all forms, and so I really don't approve of it. Like I said, this was honestly a good episode. It was a fun episode. I really did enjoy it. It was a fun episode. It was cute, especially Fluttershy too. It was really fun. And I really do have to admire what they did with the episode and highlighting that, sometimes some people may act one way, but in reality there is a hidden part of them underneath that they're afraid to be known at the surface. And so, I can honestly see that, and it is very much relatable. We in the Brony fandom, we know that real well. But at the same time, I don't condone his bullying behavior and him acting out and basically acting out as a way to try to fit in. I don't agree with that, because if you have to fit in with jerks, I would rather stand up against them than try to fit in and be someone that I wasn't. Because because the longer that you're in that negative environment, the more of a risk of you becoming that. And the good news is he's young enough now that there is a possibility that he can still change his life around and change for the better. But the older that you get and the longer that you're in that, it's not good for you. It's not good for you. It's not good for your mentality. It's not good for you mentally. It's not good for you emotionally, and it's not good for you physically, and it's not good for your life. Because if we were to apply this into a real situation, I know there's been situations before where people have, they've blended in with the clique because they thought it was cool, because they were trying to conceal the real them underneath. And they found themselves, ended up doing something illegal, broke into a shop at night, vandalized something, and suddenly they found themselves in jail. And suddenly they had a criminal record. And it was a moment where they had to realize, I could have stopped this, but I didn't. There are moments whenever you have to realize where the line has to be drawn, and you have to be the one to draw it. Nobody else can draw that for you. You have to be the one to draw it. Some people can help. Some people can't help. Some people can even give you a pen to draw the line with, but you have to be the one to draw it. I did honestly really enjoy this episode. It was very interesting with Garble. I still headcanon. I still consider him a douche, and I still want to see Spike deck him one. Particularly Smolder. I want to see her deck him one. But I did really enjoy this episode. And it was an interesting setup and highlight of what can happen. If you fall into a clique or a group and you're trying to conceal the real you underneath. And it is really, really true with that. And I have to say, I think they did really well with highlighting that. I really think that they did. There was some other interesting dynamics here that to talk about with this particular episode. Is that overall, it's interesting that Smolder, she knows her brother, and so she knows kind of the real him underneath. And I do think, honestly, that that's sweet. I do think it is sweet that, and I see where the title comes in, Sweet and Smoky. It's a reference to Garble in that he's sweet on the inside, but he has to be smoky and charbroiled on the outside. to have a tough appearance. But I do think it's sweet that Smolder, that she knows her brother. She knows the real him. And that I do think it's very sweet that she is the only one that he trusts, or trusted up to this point, to let know the real him. I think that is very sweet. It's very cute, and it's very heartfelt that that he actually trusted her. I think that's beautiful. Personally, I think that's really beautiful. It's a pity that more and more brother sister friendships or relationships couldn't be more like that. But it is really cool, not just for brother and sister, but friendship wise. Whenever you have someone that you can really fully trust with your interests, with your desires, and they're not judgmental on that. Like even if they don't fully agree with it, they're still supportive. May even offer help or tips from time to time. But it is really awesome, and so I'm really honestly happy to see that here. I have to say this little segment with Fluttershy, given the dash face, whenever like this is the Rainbow Dash face that Rainbow did once before. I think it was back in it was a much earlier episode in the show whenever they were going to give Applejack an award for helping her out, and Rainbow got up on stage and said that Applejack was going to help her with a new flying trick, and she knows it's going to be so awesome, and she did this face, and so this is so great to see Fluttershy do it. And like I said, just the fandom exploded from heart attacks with this episode here. Like, legit, how could you say no to this face? And I have to say, I love this segment whenever Fluttershy asks. I mean, it's an honest, simple question, but Fluttershy asks, are all these eggs yours? That extreme blush on Ember's face. Oh my gosh. Okay, like legit. Like this is honestly a real misunderstanding that happens in real life. Like, for example, okay, okay, how many, and I know there are some females I know there's some women, some girls that watch my channel. Have you ever, or have you known any women that have been in that situation? Maybe you're babysitting. Maybe you're watching a little brother or something, or, you're watching someone else's baby. You walk into a store, and someone sees you with that baby, and they're like, oh my gosh, why didn't you tell me? Or like, oh my gosh, is it yours? And you're like, freak, no, it's not mine. Like, how many? This is a legit, honest misunderstanding. It's so funny whenever people jump to that conclusion, like, oh my gosh, you just popped it out! And you're like, what do I look like? Do I look like a freaking rocket ship? I mean, okay, like, I don't know what animal, I don't know what animal procreates the fastest. I know mice are pretty quick for it. But, like, how many times, like, women have been like, do I look like Minnie Mouse to you? Like, this is a legit thing. And it's also funny, because, like, this is a legit thing. And honestly, Ember, the blush on her face, now you could easily say that she's just embarrassed. Like, she's just embarrassed at the concept, like, you would think these are mine? But, okay, and there's something that I do not know. And if anyone knows this answer, please feel free to weigh in the comments. But, like, how many eggs can a dragon lay? Like, there's no inclination whatsoever. Are these different families, like, all these eggs from different families? Is it just, like, 1 or 2 eggs per dragon? Like, I don't know. I would imagine it's hilarious that they made this joke in MLP, honestly. Like, this blush that Ember has, like, you could honestly say there's many different ways you can interpret this. She's blushing because she's embarrassed. Like, no, these definitely aren't mine. Like, I'm still single, Or you could say, like, no, I'm totally not in a relationship. No, I'm totally not dating some guy named Jeff, We're totally not going steady, like, secret goings on behind the scene. Um, Honestly, this was a really cool scene. I really love this particular scene. But I do think it's interesting here that they use the reference to the blue flame, like the white hot blue flame, and that a traditional dragon's fire is burning red, but then like the really hot flame turns blue. I think that's really cool that they actually use that reference for this. I think it was really cool that they did that. Smolder might be little, but this girl packs a punch. Like this girl, she's a little spitfire, and I love that about her. And it's not just Smolder for this. Like there's honestly other situations too. Fluttershy is very similar to this. She might be Fluttershy, she might be shy, she might be little, but that girl packs a punch. And like there's other characters too, like Minnie Mouse. She might be little, but she's feisty as heck. And so I really love it. Basically big flame, small package. And I love it that Smolder, she's not afraid to get her claws dirty, and she's not afraid to lay the beat down on some guy if she chooses to. I love that. Another thing that I really have to admire is the dynamic between Smolder and Garble. There's a very interesting dynamic, and I think personally, it's really well balanced. And I think it really shows here, is whenever Spike is introduced whenever Spike finds out that Garble is Smolder's brother, Smolder stands up to her brother. She stands up to Garble and says, "This is my friend. You mess with him, you mess with me." I honestly love that they did that. I really do love that they did that, because too many times, and it happens in real life, someone will sway one way or the other. Like they'll sway one way or the other. Like in some situations, someone in Smolder's position would be so concerned with upsetting their family that they would side with their family and turn their back on their friend. And then whenever they're away from their family, they're totally siding with their friend. I've seen that setup happen before. I know it's happened in real life, and frankly, I'm like, screw that. I love the fact that even though Smolder cares about her brother, she's mature enough. She's definitely more mature than Garble. She's mature enough to draw the line at where right and wrong lies. And she knows that messing with someone innocent as Spike, who is her friend, is wrong. And she's willing to defend him and stand up for him because she knows that he's not as strong as her. And so she's willing to stand up for him, even if it means standing up against her brother. And honestly, I freaking love that. I love that even though that Smolder and Garble are family, she's willing to stand up against him and stand up for her friend and say, hey, stop this crap. And I love that they did that. It really is a very well balanced and very, very well done thing. Because like I said too many times, not just in media, but in real life, people will side with one or the other. I have seen that before. Someone decides, like, hey, I'm totally going to stand up for you, but then they talk to someone in their family, and they're like making fun of that same person that's in the room. And then they're like, I'm sorry, it's my family. And, I have seen that set up before, and it just is so cringeworthy. It's just so upsetting to see that. And so, I honestly don't like that. And I really like it here that, Smolder, she is, supportive of her brother still. Even though she's willing to stand up to him, she's supportive of him. And honestly, that is, I would have to say, that is both a friendship and that is a really good family bond. Whenever you're willing to not let a sibling or a friend do something in the wrong, whenever you're mature enough to stand up to them and say, "Hey, this is wrong. You need to stop." To me personally, that is real friendship. That is a real brother-sister friendship. That is a real bond. That is, and for a friendship, that is a real friendship. Whenever you just let them do whatever and you don't say anything, you're kind of contributing, because you're just allowing them to do something do their own douchebaggery. But whenever you're mature enough to be able to stand up against them, to me that is a real friend. Whenever they're willing to stand up to you and say, hey, you need to stop this, you're doing something wrong, it's wrong to do, it's going to affect you, it's going to hurt someone else. I really have to admire that, and I really love that they did that here. And just because, and that's something that, sometimes people don't often say, is just because you're willing to stand up to your friends or your family, it doesn't mean you don't care about them. In fact, I think it means that you care about them more, because, to me personally, if you're willing to stand up to them or stand up against them and help point them in the right direction whenever you see that they're doing something wrong, that means that you care more about them than if you just decided to take a step back and just let them do whatever. Because real friends want to help out and say, hey, don't do this. It's not right. And, you know, family as well. And so I really have to say, Smolder is the mature one here. Really, really mature on her part. And I really love that development with her. But I have to say, we already know that Fluttershy would make a great mother. We already know that Fluttershy would make an absolutely great mother. And it would be awesome to see some, you know, like, see her be a mother, what she would do with her kid or kids. Because just her motherly nature, we know why she loves animals. I mean, Fluttershy has such a gentle, motherly nature here. It's just really sweet. It's really, really sweet and adorable. But this scene whenever Garble throws the throws the lava ball, and Fluttershy ends up standing up to him. This goes back. This episode is another good highlight for the development with Fluttershy that we've had over the past 8 years. In the beginning, Fluttershy, you know, in the beginning, this is a very interesting thing because this kind of shows how far Fluttershy has come along. If you go back to Season 1 to Dragonshy, Fluttershy was scared of dragons. She was totally afraid of dragons and not willing to stand up to them. By the end of the episode, however, she stood up to the dragon in defense of her friends. This episode shows right here, Fluttershy is not afraid of the dragons. Now, she's not afraid of them, nor is she afraid to stand up to them. And now here she's standing up to bullies. She's standing up to bullies, and she's not afraid that, you know, that they could hurt her, but she's standing up for a friend. And honestly, that, again, it shows the development that we've got with Fluttershy over the past several years. Her, you know, she's still shy. She's still the timid little Fluttershy that we know, but there's basically a hidden dragon underneath this girl. You know, like underneath the surface, there's a hidden beast. This is kind of like literally the definition of Beauty and the Beast. Beauty on the outside, beast on the inside. And Fluttershy is willing to stand up and give a beat down to anyone that ends up affecting her friends. And here we see the moment when, whenever Fluttershy is ready to go full broom up the butt penetration mode. Like, this girl is Fluttershy. She's definitely one of my favorite characters because it's, you know, I remember seeing that somewhere posted somewhere before. It's always the quiet ones. You know, like, you got those people that are more outspoken and, you know, more angry, more easily visually agitated. But it's the quiet ones that always sit in the corner or sit in the back, you know, that are the ones that are the forces to be reckoned with that you don't want to take off. Fluttershy is like that. And what we see here is just a glimpse of her true ultimate power. Like, between... I don't know, honestly. Between who would win between Fluttershy and Shaggy, I don't know. I think it would be a mutual thing. I think between Fluttershy and Shaggy, they would both blow up the world. But again, whenever Fluttershy yells and she gets the attention, again, I honestly love this with Fluttershy because, and then she realizes that she just yelled, and then she just she's so eloquently clears her throat and begins to speak in her normal voice. This is so Fluttershy, it really is. But you can tell that Fluttershy has been hanging out with Luna because she used the Royal Canterlot voice. She used the Royal Ponyville voice here. But Fluttershy is interesting, and honestly, I really relate to Fluttershy because Fluttershy tries to use a sort of a very level-headed, very civilized approach. But, you know, she pretty much holds back a beast within her for whenever she has to let the beast out of the cage. And honestly, like here, whenever Fluttershy is like, alright, you've messed with the wrong girl. Now you're going to get a whooping. Like, this girl is ready to beat the crap out of him here, and like, it's honestly hilarious. It really is, because Fluttershy is definitely not someone you want to take off. She might be sweet and timid and innocent on the outside, but yeah, underneath, yeah, she's a total beast. If these characters were cars, Fluttershy would be like one of those. Fluttershy would be one of those vehicles that look stock on the outside, looks plain and simple. But then you raise up the hood. There is a freaking F1 Indy racing engine under the hood. Like she would dominate you anywhere. And just slam the hood shut. I ain't messing with that. That's Fluttershy. But like I said, here we do see a very sweet bonding moment between Garble and Smolder, where Garble is fully supportive and she's totally interested in her brother's interests and she's totally supportive of him. But like I said, she's not afraid to stand up to him, and I really have to admire that she's not afraid of him. You know, she's not afraid of him. She's not, you know, he might be bigger, but she's not afraid. She's not afraid to stand her ground and let him know that if he messes with people that she cares about, that she'll give him a beatdown. And I really have to admire that. I really admire the true, and to me that is true. To me that is true love. You know, whenever you're willing to stand up to someone to let them know, hey, you know, you're not going to hurt other people that I care about. But again, here, Fluttershy is standing up against a big dragon, and she's not afraid. Like, she's not afraid. She's using a very calm, very civilized, very level-headed approach, and she's just using her being completely rational. And she's standing up to this dragon and letting him know, and she's talking in a civilized, very calm manner. She's not being cocky. Exactly, she was just a little bit cocky. But then that, you know, that's the awesome thing about Fluttershy. But you know, she's not being overly cocky to the point of intimidating him, you know, egging him on to the point of him wanting to beat the crap out of her. But no, she's just using just a bit of cockiness to kind of let him know that she knows what's up, she knows what's going on, and she, you know, she's not stupid to it. Whenever Fluttershy begins to play these bongos here, and she begins to be poetic, and she can actually play these drums really well. This is another glimpse. I think this is another glimpse of Hipster-Shy here. I don't think the full. I still think that part of Hipster-Shy is still here, because this whole scene here with Fluttershy made me think. This whole scene here made me think about that coffee shop scene in an Extremely Goofy Movie, whenever Max, PJ, and the other character whose name escapes me, Bobby, were in that little coffee shop, and they were, you know, there were people up on stage, and this reminded me of that scene. Like, Fluttershy is kind of like that one girl, I forgot her name, the one that PJ ended up getting an interest in. This is kind of like her, in a way. Like, Fluttershy is just a bit more upbeat than that. But yeah, this whole scene made me think of that scene from an Extremely Goofy Movie. And like I said, Fluttershy, it's really interesting because these characters are like us. Like, realistically, these characters are just like us, just like people, because you never know. Whenever you never know what kind of hidden talents that you have until you try something. You honestly don't. And I love how that on the surface, what we see of these characters is not the full scope of all that there is to these characters. You know, we did not know that Fluttershy could play the drums here. We did not know that she could be poetic until this moment. And it was just another glimpse of a scene for the characters that we did not know that they were capable of. We did not know was a part of their personality, a part of their persona, a part of a hidden talent that they had. We did not know that. Now, some people would say, oh, great, let's just shoehorn in this new talent for the characters. I don't look at it as shoehorning, because realistically, this is a real thing. You know, you don't know what you have a talent. You don't know what you can do, what you have a talent in, until you try. You might not. How many people? I mean, there might be situations where you don't even think about playing the saxophone, but then you get your hands on one, and suddenly, boom, you're playing it just amazingly well. You may not know that you can sing, but then suddenly you just sing to yourself, or you just make a video on YouTube, and boom, you're good. There are different people that have hidden talents that they don't know that they have. They don't know that they have hidden talents, but then they just try something. And there are times whenever people can do something good, but they don't look at it, whatsoever as a hidden talent. And then you'll try something, and you'll surprise somebody else that you did it. This has happened in real life, and so this is realistic in what Fluttershy is doing, because I don't look at it. I don't consider it whatsoever shoehorning in a sudden talent for a character. You know, like, the characters are not jacks of all trades. They have their flaws, they're not good at some things, and that's what makes them realistic. But having a sudden talent for something that you did not know that you had, or, you know, suddenly being able to do something good that you didn't know you could, it's realistic because there are times whenever in real life you will discover something that you did not know that you could do. And you'll try it, you'll find out you're good at it, but you didn't know you were until you decided to try it. That's real life. And I really love this moment with Fluttershy because it is realistic in that. And it's also cool because Fluttershy is just, it's a character that you wouldn't exactly think would be doing that, but it's so cool. It honestly totally fits her. And I love this little moment with her. It's just so cool. And I have to say, that moment whenever Smolder makes the mention about that Garble hasn't written any poetry since she left, this is honestly realistic, because this is kind of like the equivalent of having, in a way, you can kind of consider this a bit of the equivalent of having kind of writer's block, or, you know, creativity block, is that you know, you feel restricted, you feel confined, it feels like your river of creativity has dried up or has been dammed off, and you can't do anything about it. And this is realistic, you know, because here he wasn't able to express himself. Smolder was the only one whom he trusted, and so she was the only one who he could express himself to. And so whenever she was gone, he had no one else to trust. And that's realistic. I know that has happened in real life. You know, like, the one person whom you trust is just not around, and so you can't express yourself freely. And so you're afraid to let others hear you or see you. And so here, he felt it was building up within him. You know, all of this was building up within him, and so he had been just bullying and hanging out with these other guys for so long, he wasn't able to be himself whenever he was away from them. And so all of that turmoil was just, and negativity was just building up within him, and he wasn't able to release that stress, and he wasn't able to just be himself. And so I can see why that, you know, I understand him missing his sister, but I can also see that he, you know, like, he also missed being able to be expressive, you know, express himself and be the real him. And so, you know, all of that, whenever, and honestly, how many of us can relate to that whenever you're not able to do something that you enjoy? Like, for me, if a week went by that I wasn't able to do a YouTube video, I was getting stressed. I was getting mentally and emotionally stressed. And it was affecting me because I wasn't able to do that. If I don't get to write often, or, you know, do something, you know, writing, or I get stressed. And it begins to bother me because I feel like I'm not being myself, and so I can honestly say that this is very much realistic. And another thing here is, of course, whenever Fluttershy reveals that Garble had been bullying Spike, and again, Smolder stands up to him. She stands up to him and is willing to, again, she's willing to wrap his wings around his neck and choke him. And again, I love the dynamic here, the element between them, because it really shows, to me, this is real love. And I know what some people are going to say. You mean you think real love is standing up to somebody and willing to beat the crap out of them? No. Real love in a brother-sister relationship, in a friendship, caring for someone truly means standing up, means not being afraid to stand up to them and let them know whenever they're wrong. Especially if them being wrong could hurt them or could hurt others. Just taking a step back and letting them, you know, just letting them do whatever they want, giving them that freedom. You need to be there for them. You need to be there for them, so be supportive, but you also need to be mature enough and wise enough to know if what they're doing is wrong, if there is a danger, that it could endanger them, it could endanger you, or it could endanger others. And it doesn't matter if it's a friendship, if it's your brother, your sister, or if it's other members of your family. You have to be able to understand what the choices that they're making and how it's going to affect them. And you have to be able to be supportive, and at times you have to be the voice of reason. You know, you have to be the voice of reason, and you have to be able to have a backbone and be able to stand up to them and say, hey, I'm not going to let you do this because it's dangerous. You know, like, you have to have a backbone. You have to be able to stand up to someone, even someone that you care about. You have to be able to stand up to them and let them know that, number one, you know, if it's in that situation, you have to let them know you're not going to get pushed around. You're not going to let them walk all over you. You're not a doormat. But you also have to be mature enough to, and wise enough to be able to, and have enough backbone to stand up to them and, you know, be the voice of reason at times. And I really admire that they did that with Smolder here, that she's not letting him walk all over her. I love the fact that she's mature enough to stand up to him, even though she's probably a little younger. I really love that they did this with her. And also love how, again, Fluttershy, she's standing up to him. She knows he's a bully, but she's standing up to him, and she's pointing out what he's done. And I really have to admire that. And here, Smolder was, Garble, sorry. I don't care if I call him Gargle. But Garble was, again, he was kind of being a ponist, shall we say? Where he was like, being a pony is bad, you know, like being a dragon is cool. Really? Really? You're proud of being a douche? Okay, but Fluttershy here, I honestly love this little moment. Whenever she just gasps, whenever what he said just totally sinks in, and then she stands up to him, like she goes full Flutter Rage mode here, and like she just totally gets up in his grill. And here she's really frustrated, and she just tells him that there's nothing wrong with being a pony whatsoever. And again, I love that here that she's standing up for Spike. She's standing up, again, like Smolder, she's standing up for her friend, and she's standing up, she's backing him up. And she's not afraid to stand up to him. And honestly, what Fluttershy said here is also true. That Spike wasn't afraid to be himself. He wasn't afraid to be himself, regardless of what others thought, regardless of what others would say. He wasn't afraid to be himself, and that was real strength. And she told Garble here that Spike was stronger than him. And honestly, he is. There are two ways that you can view strength. And I kind of think back to Disney's Hercules. And that was really one really good example of that. In Hercules, Hercules thought that it was physical strength that he needed to be able to get back to Olympus. He thought that it was physical strength, but it wasn't. It was the strength of his heart that he had to show. And that's kind of the case here. Garble, he's comparing physical strength. Physical strength don't really mean anything. What really matters is the strength that's what's in here. That's the real strength. And that Fluttershy knows that, and so that's what she's pointing out. Spike is stronger mentally and emotionally. He may not be stronger physically, but then that doesn't matter. Brute strength is nothing if you don't have brains. You know, you have to have brains, and you have to have a heart above all, but you also have to have some brains too. Brute strength is nothing. You can be a total brute. You know, you can be 6 foot tall. I mean, you could be able to bench press 300 pounds, whatever. But it's nothing if you don't have a heart and brains. But you could be weak, but you can have a heart and brains. And personally, I would have much more respect for someone who had a heart and brains over someone who just had brawn. I would. And I would have much more respect for people who had heart and brains over brawn. And Fluttershy just pointed that out. Spike is stronger mentally and emotionally because he's willing to be himself and enjoy life. He's willing to strike forward, to strike out and deviate and be different. He's willing to be himself. And that is really true. That is honestly very true. And I love that they put that in here. But I'm not going to deny, whenever they made the mention about warming the eggs and knitting something, I honestly thought that's what they were going to do. I thought Spike was just going to create like a big blanket to go around, and that's what I honestly thought they were going to do. But I got to say, Garble, he's not bad. He's not bad at being poetic. It's comical because it just seems so out of character for him, considering the character that we've seen. But at the same time, he's not bad at it. I also really love at the end how Ember was like, okay, she loved the poetic, she loved the poetry, and so she asked Garble if he could teach her, if he could show her. I love that. I honestly do. I think it's really cool. I really honestly think it's cool. And I think it's really awesome that now Ember has an interest in this. And as the ruler of the Dragonlands, she made it known that she didn't want harsh judgment passed upon others just because they had different interests or passions than others. She wanted things to be open. She wanted people to be open-minded, and I really have to say, and I have to say, I really admire Amber for that, because she's wanting everyone to be open-minded and open-hearted about things and not be closed off. And I really have to add and admire that. But maybe this is foreshadowing, because you remember the scene earlier with the eggs, and Fluttershy's like, "Are these yours?" And Ember blushed, and she's like, "No, no." And then at the end, she tells Garble, "Hey, I'm interested in your poetry. Can you?" This is foreshadowing. Like later on, it's going to be Ember having the eggs. It will, and Garble will be the father. How much you want to bet? But Fluttershy and the dragons is, this is adorable. But hey, you know what? Fluttershy plays Dragon Age. No, I don't play Dragon Age. Okay, I don't play Dragon Age, but like that is one of the ads that they have on the MLP Gameloft game, Dragon Age. So that's just what comes to mind. Where you can get your dragons, and I've never played it. I don't plan to, but I've seen it enough. I know. But Fluttershy's a fan of Dragon Age. Okay, but yeah, like I said, I really did enjoy this episode. But it is interesting and realistic in what they did with Garble here. I have to say it is realistic, but I am very curious about. I don't know if we'll see Garble anymore throughout the rest of this whole season. Considering this is the final season, I don't know. But I have to say, I really did enjoy this episode. And even though I still don't approve of the possible redemption of Garble, considering Lightning Dust didn't get it, and that she's supposed to, I still don't agree with that. But I still can totally respect the episode for doing what it did, and taking the direction that it did, and showing what it did. Like with the message about, basically, at least my personal interpretation, don't allow yourself to be someone you weren't, or don't allow yourself to be someone you're not. Just be yourself and be okay with that. And real friends will accept you, and be okay with that. Real friends will accept you for that. And people who don't accept you, maybe they're not worth trying to be friends with. And I really do have to admire what they did with the episode. And even though I still don't approve of the redemption for Garble, if you could consider this that, I still have to admire what they did with the episode. There was still some good brother-sister moments between Garble and Smolder that I did enjoy. Fluttershy was just adorable in this episode, and I did still enjoy the concept of, and I also have to admire Spike's tenacity and determination to continue to try to be open-minded to Garble and everything. I do have to admire that. And I still stand by what I said prior. But again, I did enjoy this episode. It was interesting to see. And I'm looking forward to the next episode as well, see what happens in it. I have no idea. But again, that's my thoughts on this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks again to everybody that did this episode as well. Thank you all. And thanks again for joining me, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think in the comments as well. And thanks again for joining me. Hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video that I do. Take care.